Chapter 1432. A green-robed figure with a smile on his face slowly grew bigger and appeared calmly in the middle of the vortex. Extraordinary indeed. The Tao ancestor appeared from the sky. His voice was still elegant, as if he did not care about the 6 doppelgangers being destroyed. He said lightly, "You are indeed the top of this world. Even my 6 saint doppelgangers are no match for you." 6 saint doppelgangers. These 4 words made Demon Emperor Dong Huang and several Zhu Wu's faces change drastically. It turned out to be the 6 saint doppelgangers. In other words, the 6 saints were the 6 corners that supported the fate of heaven and earth, and now the 6 saints had left. The Tao ancestor chose to sacrifice the 6 doppelgangers in exchange for the fate of the 6 saints' remaining positions to increase his combat power. This should be a secret technique of the Tao ancestor. Demon Emperor Dijuan took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Could it be that you have already collected the fate of the 6 saints' positions before you came? Just that you haven't had time to refine it. Now that the space here is sealed and the thunder is fighting, it is the best place for you to refine it. That's why you decided to fight." The Tao ancestor nodded lightly and said, "Your Majesty, you have some knowledge after all." "That's right, that's it." Everyone couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. If that was the case, wouldn't the consequences be too terrifying? So a Xiaoduo frowned and said, "Then what's the matter with the appearance of the Nether River Patriarch and his death?" The Tao ancestor explained patiently, "Just to increase the chance and the fate of the clan, just in case." "What about the demon ancestor Rahu?" Dijiang Zhu Wu asked in a deep voice. You ask too many questions." The Tao ancestor put his hands behind his back and smiled. "If you don't make a move now, the time will be up." For a moment, everyone felt as if there was a piece of lead pressing down on their hearts. This time, the Tao ancestor's aura was obviously several times stronger than before. Just based on the feeling alone, it was already impossible to match up to him. It was as if everyone was an ant in his palm, and he could destroy them with a flip of his palm. Perhaps this was the demeanor of the number 1 person in the world in the true sense. However, once this understanding was born in their hearts, how could they fight this battle? Sui Xiaoduo was shocked and puzzled at the same time. The Tao ancestor was so powerful. How could the fiend ancestor, who was as famous as the Tao ancestor, be so weak? Great Witch Dan Kong took a deep breath, turned his head, and looked at Flood. There was a deep meaning in his eyes. Flood's eyes turned red at once, and his tall body seemed to stiffen. He stood there in a daze, not moving at all. The veins on his neck bulged, and his entire aura became heavy and sorrowful. Great Witch Dan Kong grinned and laughed happily, as if he would return to the reunion of the brothers and the gathering of the 12 great witches. The pressure was great. However, the battle still had to continue. This battle was still the closest moment to defeating the Tao ancestor. If he missed this moment and this specific environment, the so-called defeat of the Tao ancestor was nothing more than an illusion. Apart from here, there was no other chance. There wasn't much time left. He had to seize the moment. Hearing a thunderous roar, Senior Flood Magus wielded the 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer, and rushed up first, without thinking about his own safety. "If there must be casualties, I'll start with her." Everyone also made their moves one after another. Each of them exerted their full strength. Shocking and world-shaking moves were thrown out as if they were free. Ordinary people might not be able to see the essence of the skills even once in a lifetime. At this moment, it was extremely gorgeous and brilliant, but it only lasted for a moment and passed in the blink of an eye. As for the great battle that was about to begin, the intensity of it was even greater than before. Yu Moyan rushed forward a little because he was worried about Du Guyen's comfort. The Tao ancestor aimed at the gap and slapped heavily on the sword. The long sword had almost no room to resist and was instantly broken. A thunderous force flowed along the broken sword and rushed into the meridians all over his body. In an instant, the meridians all over his body exploded. He fell out without a sound, and the blood all over his body spurted out like a fountain. Dugu Yen also followed in Yumoyan's footsteps. The two of them were connected by heart. The success of the two wings match made their strength improve greatly. At the same time, they were able to resist the pressure together and share the effect of injuries. At this moment, Yumoyan was seriously injured, and so was Dugu Yen. Like Yumoyan, all the meridians all over her body exploded, and blood spurted out all over her body. No, if Dugu Yen didn't share the injury with Yumoyan, Yumoyan was destined to be smashed into pieces and his spirit destroyed. Demon Emperor Jun was shocked and shouted, "Everyone, be careful, don't fight recklessly. Now he's several times stronger than before. He can kill people by transmitting his power through objects." Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and the sense of powerlessness in their hearts was even stronger than before. Yumoyan's cultivation was now at the peak of the half-saint realm, and he was only half a step away from the sage-to-be. However, even with such a strong cultivation and Dugu Yen's help to share the injury, he was actually destroyed by the transmission of power through objects. This was simply unbelievable. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, how could they believe it? How was he going to defend himself against such a powerful opponent? The real body of Tao Ancestor, whose divine power was like a prison, severely injured Yumoyan and his wife in one move. Fortunately, Li Chenglong stepped forward to block the attack, and Gao Qiao quickly moved the two to the back to avoid the possibility of them continuing to bear the impact of the aftermath of the battle. At this moment, Zhou Xiaoduo, who was attacking aggressively, had already collided with the Tao Ancestor for hundreds of times. Among all the people present, only 6 people, Zhu Wu, Flood, Zhou Changlu's family, Demon Emperor and Demon Empress Dong Huang, and Li Chenglong, could fight head-on with the Tao Ancestor. The others didn't dare to fight head-on with the Tao Ancestor. Thinking of this, the heavy feeling in everyone's hearts increased by a few degrees. Even Zhou Xiaoduo was no exception. The Tao Ancestor was indeed the Tao Ancestor. He really deserved his reputation. His strength had obviously been greatly reduced, but he could still exert such a terrifying combat power. If the time limit was reached, how powerful would the Tao Ancestor be without any shackles and restrictions? Zhou Xiaoduo was burning with anxiety. What should we do? How can we reverse this bad situation? If the situation continued to develop like this, he was afraid that today they would really be wiped out. Everyone present, including Zhu Wu, Demon Emperor, and the others who had some understanding of the Tao Ancestor's strength, had never thought that the Tao Ancestor would still be so powerful in the face of the joint attack of so many sage-to-be sages even after his strength had been greatly reduced. They were still far from being his match. This was clearly the most perfect design he had ever made. There were targets everywhere, suppression everywhere, unexpected and unexpected. There were even heaven-defying monsters like Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian helping in the battle. But the Tao Ancestor still broke through with absolute strength. Even if they wouldn't be completely wiped out here, the Tao Ancestor's strength would definitely be stronger when they got out of here. Once he went to settle the score with them, they would only be defeated one by one. There was even less hope. At the right time, Xiaolong's voice sounded in Zhou Xiaoduo's heart. At this moment, the battle is fierce and dangerous. We can only take a risk. Master, swallow and absorb a large amount of luck points and try to break through. If your strength is further improved, you may be able to compete with the people in front of you. Alas, if the space exterminating pagoda can be more perfect, it can greatly increase your strength. Unfortunately, distant water can't help a nearby fire. Zhou Xiaoduo sighed. He now had a huge amount of luck points in his hands, tens of billions of luck points in reserve. But when it came to perfecting the space-exterminating pagoda, most of the supreme-grade heavenly materials and earthly treasures with spatial attributes in this world were basically in his hands. How could he get more? Now, there was really no other way. He could only choose to take a risk and take a risk. So Xiao Duo made up his mind and absorbed 1,000 drops of luck points. In an instant, his meridians immediately showed signs of swelling and tearing. Abundant spiritual energy whistled into his meridians, and a feeling that his whole body was about to explode suddenly attacked him. So Xiao Duo felt that his body was filled with a huge amount of power. He couldn't feel better if he didn't release it. The only thought in his mind was to wave his sledgehammer and rush forward with a roar. He launched a fierce attack without any regard for his own safety, and it was almost disorderly. Boom! Boom! And in the next dozens of consecutive strikes, he was actually on par with the Tao ancestor. Seeing that Swiss Xiao Duo had taken on most of the Tao ancestor's attacks and seemed to have some leeway, everyone couldn't help but take a breath of relief. They were still afraid in their hearts. The situation had taken a turn for the worse. If they continued to fight, there would inevitably be casualties. Everyone knew this in their hearts and had already reached a consensus. What they didn't know was that although Swiss Xiao Duo looked majestic and insufferably arrogant now, he was actually full of helplessness in his heart. Because through this round of fighting, he had roughly judged a conclusion. According to his current situation, absorbing 2,000 drops of luck points at once was already his limit. And now, he was doing his best to fight desperately, seemingly on par with the Tao ancestor. However, he was just using the absorbed power for other purposes and not really integrating it into his body. In other words, at least in a short period of time, this method was not to improve his true strength. This also showed another thing. As long as the other party adapted to his current rhythm, then it would be his turn to suffer again. As expected, after 100 hammers, the Tao ancestor let out a long laugh and punched heavily on the 9-9 cat hammer. Just like the previous strong collision, the flesh fist hit the hammer hard, but the result was very different. With a muffled boom, Xiao Zhou, who was attached to the 9-9 kitty hammer, let out a miserable cry and was almost shattered. As for Swiss Xiao Duo, he retreated 100 feet as if he had been electrocuted. The Tao ancestor, who had repelled the enemy with a punch, suddenly moved and grabbed the mace in Qiangliang Zhu Wu's hand. Qiangliang Zhu Wu wanted to let go and retreat, but it was too late. Qiangliang only felt as if his whole body had been electrocuted, and his meridians felt as if they were about to explode. Then, his whole body was pulled over by the Tao ancestor. The powerful Zhu Wu's body was actually unable to resist. Gong Gong Emperor, Demon Emperor Jiang, and the others were all shocked. They hurriedly rushed up to help, but they saw Tao ancestor draw a weird circle with his other hand. A magical power emerged, mixed with the power of Tao, and blocked all the people outside. Then, the mace turned into powder with a crisp bang. Then, Qiangliang Zhu Wu screamed and fell down softly. His soul, divine sense, and physical life were all shattered like the mace, scattering in all directions like dust. At the instant that everyone's eyes almost split apart from rage, the candle dragon let out a shrill howl as well, and then half of its body suddenly vanished and transformed into powder. The Flood Witch and the others rushed forward bravely and attacked with all their might. However, in the next moment, the candle dragon's body exploded like a bomb. Just now, he was the closest and had made up his mind to self-explode, hoping to cause serious damage to the Tao ancestor. However, the Tao ancestor had already seen through his plan and would not give him a chance. He shattered half of his body through the air, so self-exploding naturally did not work. His original action was equivalent to sending himself to the Tao ancestor's door, and he was completely destroyed by the other punch. When everyone saw that Zhuo Duo had suddenly shown his power and seemed to have suppressed the Tao ancestor, they heaved a sigh of relief. Then, the situation changed again. It was getting worse and worse, and it was almost out of control. As Zhu Wu, Qiangliang, and the Candle Dragon died one after another, Xiang Chong and Zhanshuajuan were also seriously injured. This was still not enough. The team was usually well-trained, and the small team cooperated well with each other. They would always work together to resist and share the attack. Otherwise, at least one or two of the three would have died. However, even so, the three of them were seriously injured and could no longer fight. Zhu Wu and Di Jiang, who were at the side, went completely crazy at this moment. Their brothers were turning into ashes in front of them one after another, and they did not even have time to say a word. What a tragic reality. In fact, it was not only Di Jiang. The hearts of the remaining 4 ancestral sorcerers had been broken into pieces. At this point, there was no reason to speak of. They only wanted to rush forward and perish together with the opponent in front of them. They wanted to die together with the enemy. Zhuo Duo roared and rushed forward again, waving the 9x9 cat hammer wildly. This time, he absorbed a total of 2,000 drops of luck points in one go. This was already the upper limit that he estimated that he could bear at the moment. It was also because of this that his movement speed and explosive power suddenly soared to the extreme. It was an unprecedented extreme. It was also because of this that he was ahead of Di Jiang and the others. The reason why Zhuo Duo went to this extreme was very simple. If he allowed Di Jiang and Zhu Wu to die impulsively like this, it would not help the overall situation at all. His team would only suffer a serious loss of combat power, and there would be even less hope. The death of Zhu Wu and the Candle Dragon was a clear proof. A simple self-explosion could not threaten the Tao ancestor at all. It would only be a waste of their lives. The 9x9 cat hammer suddenly enlarged and waved wildly, blocking the way forward of Di Jiang and the others. It was also at this moment Grand Magus Dan Kong, who had not participated in the siege since the beginning of the battle, suddenly moved. While Dan Kong had participated in the previous 6 battles to destroy the doppelgangers. But now, in the face of the Tao ancestor's true body, Grand Magus Dan Kong's strength was not enough. No matter how angry he was, he could only watch from the side. But because of this, his strength and vitality had been greatly restored, and he had recovered 90% of his normal state. However, this 90% strength was insignificant for the Tao ancestor's true body. But at this moment, he moved. With his unique space power, he activated the limit of teleportation. Teleportation and space power were the best skills of Grand Magus Dan Kong, and they were also the skills that he had the highest attainment in. But this time, he did not attack with it. Instead, with the teleportation, he came in front of the Tao ancestor instantly. He opened his hands and used his head and chest to welcome Zhuo Duo's hammer. He stared at Zhuo Duo with only calmness and guilt in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Xiao Duo." Boom! Zhuo Duo's hammer with all his strength was meant to stop the enemy and protect his friends. But he never dreamed that Grand Magus Dan Kong would suddenly appear and block his hammer with his body as if he was protecting the Tao ancestor. However, the momentum of the hammer had reached its end, and there was no time to stop or even weaken the power of the hammer. With a loud bang, the 9x9 cat hammer crazily smashed into the chest of Senior Witch Dan Kong. The huge hammer smashed his head into pieces, and his entire body was turned into powder under the unparalleled wind of the hammer. Everyone was dumbfounded. Only Zhuo Duo's roar could be heard in the air. "What are you doing? Bastard, why are you doing this?" Even the Tao ancestor was stunned at this moment. He also couldn't figure it out. Why did this Wu people Dan Kong sacrifice his life to protect him at this time? This shouldn't be. It didn't make sense. Even if he saw that he had the upper hand and wanted to turn around and surrender to him, he didn't need to show his loyalty like this. He just put his head under Zhuoxiaoduo's hammer and died inexplicably. Why was this? What was his purpose? But then, the Tao ancestor, who had lived in the world for countless years and accumulated infinite wisdom, seemed to understand something. His puzzled eyes suddenly turned into anger. Dan Kong. The raging fire Grand Magus and the ice-deep Magus's twisted and sorrowful expression became a little more understanding. With the destruction of Grand Magus Dan Kong's divine soul, Zhuoxiaoduo suddenly felt that there was a huge change inside the Tower of Annihilation. A huge change that almost shook the world. The whole Tower of Annihilation was roaring and turbulent. It seemed that the whole world was expanding, becoming broader, stronger, and closer to perfection. If the previous Tower of Annihilation had the embryonic form of a world, then the current Tower of Annihilation was the embryonic form of a world. The former was still not a world, but the latter was a real world. With the birth of the world, mysterious Taoist connotations suddenly flashed on Zhuoxiaoduo's body. His momentum and cultivation were increasing at an amazing rate. It seemed that there was no upper limit and it continued to grow endlessly. It seemed that the surging spiritual qi, even if it really made Zhuoxiaoduo explode, could still continue to grow without limit. The Tao ancestor's eyes flashed, and he suddenly attacked Zhuoxiaoduo. He attacked with all his strength. He intended to kill with one blow, and he attacked with all his strength. At this time, Zhuoxiaoduo felt that his whole body and mind were dizzy because of the sudden surge of abundant spiritual qi. Coupled with the shock of Grand Magus Dan Kong's sudden death under his hammer, he couldn't resist, and he staggered and made bad moves. Stop him! The great flood which rushed forward as if his life depended on it. The Tower of Annihilation is being perfected. It's comparable to the Tao ancestor's level. You must stop him. With a roar, the first to react were Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding. So that's it. The truth of Grand Magus Dan Kong's inexplicable death should be here. No matter how powerful the Tower of Annihilation had become, the origin of the Tower of Annihilation was to destroy Grand Magus Dan Kong. This was the established destiny of the Tower of Annihilation. Destiny. Even though the relationship with the Umno Alliance was eased later, and they fought side by side against the enemy, and the past grievances were gradually put aside, the original mission given to the Tower of Annihilation was never completed. Thinking back, when Zhuoxiaoduo got the Tower of Annihilation, he also made an oath to kill Grand Magus Dan Kong. This karma would not change because of the change of position. Zhuoxiaoduo's Tower of Annihilation had all the conditions to become a complete world. The only thing it lacked was its own karma. Now, Grand Magus Dan Kong died under Zhuoxiaoduo's hammer, and the karma was completed. The destiny of the Tower of Annihilation was completed, and a world was formed. From now on, the Tower of Annihilation was no longer the Tower of Annihilation, but a small world, a complete and perfect small world. Yes, it was a complete and perfect small world, but not perfect. It was because of the factor of the good fortune jade disc. Only by getting the good fortune jade disc could the small world be perfect, but this had nothing to do with the destiny of the Tower of Annihilation. On this point, when the source of Zhuoxiaoduo's small world was known by the Wu tribe, Great Witch Dan Kong already had an idea in his heart. At that time, the Tower of Annihilation was just a huge space equipment, so Grand Magus Dan Kong didn't feel anything. At most, he was often joked about. At that time, the 12 Grand Magi of the Umno Alliance were all there, and their destiny was complete. If the world didn't change, the 12 Grand Magi would never fall. No matter what kind of karma it was difficult. Especially at that time, the relationship between them had eased a lot, so Zhuo Duo had no position to go against Grand Magus Dan Kong. Until Zhu Wu was rescued, Zhuo Duo also came to discuss several times. In order to eliminate the disputes between the two continents, after the small world was formed, could it be loaded with the small world? And then perfectly solve the problem of clear heaven's doom. Grand Magus Dan Kong vaguely had an idea. So, for this, he specially consulted Xianming Zhu Wu, who had a stronger space ability than himself. At that time, Ancestral Witch Xianming laughed with a bit of schadenfreude and explained, if this is the case, if Dan Kong does not die, the extermination tower will never become a small world. How can a small world be so easy to achieve? If this small world is formed, what will happen? Done. This kid will be the creator of the world. Xianming Zhu Wu said, it's similar to Pangu's father god. His strength will increase to the level of invincibility in an instant. Unfortunately, this kid's world is destined to be complete. You are one of the keys to the perfection of the Wu people's destiny. Both are destined to be difficult. Xianming Zhu Wu wouldn't help Zhuo Duo no matter what position he was in. Naturally, he kept this matter a secret. In fact, it wasn't difficult to achieve this condition. As long as Grand Magus Dan Kong fell in the hands of Zhuo Duo, the destiny of the Tower of Annihilation would be complete, and there would be no more karma. The Tower of Annihilation would no longer be the Tower of Annihilation, and the world would be formed. However, at this time, the two continents were cooperating, and Dan Kong and Zhuo Duo had a good relationship. How could Zhuo Duo kill Dan Kong? Not to mention that Zhuo Duo didn't know the trick of this matter. Even if Zhuo Duo knew, he wouldn't do it. At that time, Xianming Zhu Wu didn't mean it, but Grand Magus Dan Kong listened attentively. After a few days, Grand Magus Dan Kong found the Flood Witch again to discuss the achievement of Zhuo Duo's small world. However, the Flood Witch firmly rejected it. Don't let your imagination run wild. Putting aside the fact that the integrity of the 12 great sorcerers is related to the fate of the sorcerer tribe, it doesn't make sense for us to die for the sake of a space treasure of Zhuo Duo. There is absolutely no room for discussion. For this matter, the Flood Witch beat Dan Kong up. From then on, Dan Kong was forbidden to meet Zhuo Duo. Grand Magus Dan Kong didn't want to die. Who would really want to die if they could live? So the matter had been dragged on like this. However, in the previous scuffle between the three clans, 3 of the 12 Grand Magi were killed. The so-called destiny of the Wu people was perfect and no longer existed. Grand Magus Dan Kong, who had already let go of the knot in his heart, raised it again. However, he didn't discuss this matter with others. Today, the war was fierce and dangerous. The powerhouses of the 3 clans were killed one after another. Zhu Wu and several of his brothers were also killed. Grand Magus Dan Kong, who knew that he couldn't do anything to the Tao ancestor, made a decision. He decided to use his own life to facilitate this destiny and end the karma. He didn't want to see his brothers die one by one. The seniors of the Wu people fell one by one. He was powerless. He couldn't even participate in the war because he was too weak. Did he want to see his brothers die one by one? Only he, a waste who couldn't even participate in the war, was left to be strangled to death in the end. Seeing the Tao ancestors' earth-shattering strength and the fact that everyone was not his opponent even if they joined forces to besiege him, Grand Magus Dan Kong was determined to fight with his life. Finally, he used his space teleportation for the last time. He let himself stand in front of the Tao ancestor and die under Zhuo Duo's hammer. Therefore, his last eyes were full of guilt towards Zhuo Duo. Because he knew that no matter what the result of his death was, whether Zhuo Duo was promoted or not, the pain of killing his friends with his own hands was bound to be borne by Zhuo Duo himself. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to. Grand Magus Dan Kong thought so. So, I'm sorry, Suo. Suo certainly did not know about the entanglement of karma and destiny between the Great Witch Dan Kong and the Tower of Annihilation. In fact, it was not only him, even Suo Zhonglu and the others did not know about it. Even though their cultivation was high enough, they were limited by their knowledge and experience. They simply could not realize the real relationship between the Great Witch Dan Kong and the Tower of Annihilation. What's more, they didn't think that the formation of a world was actually related to karma. However, when Grand Magus Dan Kong died, the Tower of Destruction suddenly changed, and Suo suddenly became stronger for no reason. Everyone vaguely realized this point. After all, everyone knew the original origin of Suo's Tower of Destruction. From this to the other, they were naturally enlightened. In an instant, everyone risked their lives and rushed forward. Including the remaining four Zhu Wu, the Demon Emperor and the Demon Empress, even the seriously injured Yu Moyan and others rushed forward. Because everyone knew that if this stalemate continued, they would definitely lose. They must give Suo a chance to improve his strength. If the Tao ancestor killed Suo before he finished upgrading, then there would be no hope in this battle. Now, all the hope in this battle was on Suo. All the hope was that after this upgrade, Suo could have the strength comparable to the Tao ancestor. Otherwise, there would still be no hope in this battle. Everyone's only bargaining chip. Grand Magus Dan Kong could sacrifice his life to fulfill his wish. Would they cherish death? As for Suo, he was kicked out by the Flood Witch at the first moment. Boom, boom, boom. The Tao ancestor also seemed to realize something and began to attack with all his strength, all killing moves. People were constantly being hit and sent flying. Yu Moyan, Wanli Xiu, Dugu Yen, Gao Qiao, Zhen Piao, and the others were already seriously injured. After one attack, they were directly lying on the ground and vomiting blood. They completely lost the ability to fight and could only wait passively for the sky-mending stone to heal them. Gao Qiao struggled to climb to the side of Wanli Xiu, who had used up the sky-mending stone. She pulled the hand of the unconscious Wanli Xiu and put it on her chest. The sky-mending stone didn't have much energy left. The remaining energy could barely ensure that the two women didn't die. Until now, Gao Qiao was still trying her best to fulfill the responsibility of the logistics chief of the brigade. Just as she finished, she saw Xiang Chong, Xiang Bing and Long Yuxing being smashed out and vomiting blood. They fell heavily on the ground and couldn't move. Then, the Raging Fire Grand Magus couple and the Icy Nether Grand Magus were hit and sent flying. They were also on the verge of death. Xiang Chong and the others hurried over and used the method that Gao Qiao had just used to save the three of them. But there was no doubt that the above 11 people had completely lost the ability to fight. They were destined to not be able to fight in the following battle. No, it should be 13 people. Yu Yan and Zhan Shuajuan were also hit and sent flying. Zhuo Chonglu, who had blocked half of the attacks for them, vomited 5 to 6 mouthfuls of blood. He staggered and couldn't breathe, almost unable to continue fighting. Kuinping Demon Master saw that things were not good. At the critical moment, he transformed into his original form and used his huge body to block in front of Zhuo Chonglu and the others, taking the attack of the Tao ancestor. Dong Huang Bell immediately stood in front of Kuinpeng to protect him and took the attack of the Tao ancestor. But with a loud bang, half of Kuinpeng Demon Master's body was smashed. Pieces of flesh flew all over the sky. His body flew out hundreds of times and rolled on the ground silently. After the loud bang, Dong Huang Bell let out another cry. Cracks appeared on the bell that had never been damaged. His Majesty Dong Huang, who was connected to the bell, vomited blood, and his face was paled at with another loud bang. Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Yu Xingqin, Lei Zhang Tian and the others joined forces to block the follow-up attack that was smashing towards Dong Wang. One by one, they spat out mouthfuls of blood and flew backwards. Many pieces of their internal organs appeared along with the blood they spat out. They had also completely lost the ability to fight. At this point, there were only 11 people left in the allied forces: Zhua Changlu, Wu Yuding, Zhua Xiaoyan, Dong Huang, Demon King, Demon Empress, Flood, Gonggong, Dijiang, Tian Wu, and Xian Ming. Moreover, all of them were injured and their combat power was greatly reduced. The 11 of them continued to use their remaining strength to attack and resist desperately. However, the situation was getting worse and worse. The strength of the Tao ancestor was too terrifying. At this moment, his main focus was basically on Zhua Changlu, Zhua Xiaoyan, and Demon King Dong Huang, Flood, and the others. The most important one was Zhua Xiaoyan. If it were not for the many layers of protection on Zhua Xiaoyan's body and the sword chi left by sect leader Tong Tian, which blocked a few fatal attacks for her, even if Zhua Xiaoyan's strength was the best among all of them, she would at least be seriously injured and lose her combat power. Everyone was fighting desperately and roaring in their hearts. Zhua Xiaoduo. Hurry up. Chapter 1433. Zhua Xiaoduo, who had temporarily left the battlefield, only felt that he was receiving an inexplicable infusion from head to toe. The meridians in his body were constantly being washed by this enormous spiritual energy. Even his soul and divine sense were transforming and being reborn. In the Tower of Annihilation, the embryonic form of the world was formed. Earth, fire, water, and wind were all present. Countless mountains and seas were emerging one after another. The sky was getting higher and higher, until the end could not be seen. The earth was getting thicker and thicker, carrying all things. Countless stars were densely packed in the sky. Countless Taoist rhythms were being produced bit by bit, constantly rotating in the air and flowing on the earth. Every cell in his body was cheering, constantly increasing its energy. Even his hair felt like it was being reborn from the inside out. Too slow. Faster, faster. Faster. Ah! Zhua Xiaoduo was crazily shouting and urging in his heart. In the Tower of Annihilation, the embryonic form of the world was finally established. The structure was fixed. Everything was trembling madly, turbulent, and expanding. The Tower of Annihilation, which had lost its obsession and completed its destiny mission. The changes at this moment were infinitely terrifying. The realm was also instantly turned upside down, and the sea turned into mulberry fields. The original mountains were flattened, and the original flat land turned into an ocean. The originally sparse forest was wildly expanding. Small trees, like balloons, grew and thickened. Gradually, it became 3 people's embrace, 5 people's embrace. The trunks of the trees towered into the clouds. The dense forest stretched out as far as the eye could see. As if to the end of the world. Countless cliffs, countless mountains, countless lakes, countless seawater, countless. There were even snowy mountains, glaciers, and there were also some creatures that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere suddenly. There were birds and beasts, and Zhua Xiaoduo felt that his entire spirit and cultivation were expanding along with the expansion of the world. He trembled, exhilarated, and lost. It was as if he was having a strange, absurd, and bizarre dream that was absolutely real. He anxiously thought, "Wake up. Wake up. The battle outside is very dangerous." He kept urging. His heart was burning with anxiety. He didn't know how much time had passed. Perhaps it was an instant, perhaps it was a moment, or perhaps it was a lifetime. Finally, it stopped. Zhua Xiaoduo only felt that the earth-shaking throbbing in his soul had disappeared. His entire body suddenly felt relaxed. He abruptly opened his eyes. He didn't even have time to sense the changes in his body or the progress in his cultivation. He immediately summoned the 99 kitty hammer. With a roar, he rushed into the battle. With a thought, he scanned the battlefield with his divine sense. Everyone on his side was on the verge of collapse. Regardless of whether it was the Demon Emperor and Demon Empress Dong Huang, or Zhuo Changlu and his wife, they were all vomiting blood as they fought. They were barely holding on, completely ignoring the blood that was continuously flowing out of their mouths, noses, and facial orifices. That was a sign that his internal organs had been severely shaken and he had suffered extreme internal injuries. The situation was extremely critical. Everyone was only holding on with their willpower. Just as Zhuo Xiaoduo rushed forward, the Dao ancestor swept his palm fiercely. While everyone was trying their best to resist, his palms suddenly turned into 7 palms and pierced through the trees. Wu Yuting let out a muffled groan. She had already been slapped on the shoulder. With a cracking sound, her entire shoulder was smashed, and she flew out like a kite with a broken string. "Mom!" Zhuo Xiaoduo shouted and flew forward to catch Wu Yuting. He quickly stuffed a pill into his mouth and then raised his sledgehammer and rushed into the battle. As soon as he thought about it, he arrived above the Dao ancestor at an unimaginable speed. An unprecedentedly ferocious aura blasted towards the Dao ancestor. There was also an extremely gentle force that gently pushed everyone away. At the same time, 2 bottles of elixirs were thrown into Zhuo Xiaonian's arms. It was the 9 Revolutions golden pill. With a crisp bang, the 99 cat hammer was like thunder and lightning. It instantly evolved into a sea of thunder and lightning. It quickly condensed above the head of the Tao ancestor. Then, like a river of thunder, the thunder and lightning poured down. For a moment, the entire space within 1,000 feet was filled with the black and white colors generated by Zhuo Xiaoduo's 99 cat hammer. The Dao runes circulated one after another, turning into a thunderstorm that was infinitely arrogant. Such a Dao rune was actually a completely unfamiliar Dao rune. It was a Dao rune that did not belong to this world. Seeing that an unprecedented attack was approaching, a divine sword appeared in the Dao ancestor's hand. The sword was as clear as water, and its style was ancient. However, it was naturally mixed with an aura of a ruler descending to the world. It was as if once the sword was out, all the living beings in the entire space, regardless of the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas, had to bow their heads and worship it. "The name of the sword is Chun Jun," the Dao ancestor said calmly. "It has already been 100,000 yuan hui. It has yet to appear in the mortal world." With a sway of the sword, it had already transformed into thousands of cold lights. Every sword light accurately blocked the enemy's hammer. There was no mistake. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo did not retreat at all. He did not give in at all and fought fiercely. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that his cultivation base was about to explode. Even now, his meridians were still absorbing the spirit qi that was gushing in. They were still expanding and becoming stronger. There was more than enough to go around, and it was endless. At that moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo roared, "What sword can compare to my cat hammer?" The Dao ancestor stared at the 2 hammers and personally felt the thunderous impact of the 2 hammers. The muscles on his face twitched, and there was an inexplicable expression in his eyes. It was the same expression as the Flood Witches when she heard the name of the 2 hammers. Such a divine artifact. Even if it fought head-on with a peerless divine sword like the Chun Jun sword, it was not at a disadvantage at all. It even took the initiative and suppressed the heaven-defying divine weapon of the Chun Jun sword. It was actually called such a name. If you don't know how to name it, then don't name it, okay? You are ruining the style of such a divine artifact for no reason. The collision did not stop, and the battle between the 2 of them became more and more intense. Out of everyone's expectations, Zhuo Xiaoduo, whose strength had improved by leaps and bounds as soon as he started, continued to fight with the Tao ancestor, and his cultivation was still improving by leaps and bounds. As time passed, he actually became more and more powerful. From the beginning, he was not proficient and not very harmonious. Gradually, he climbed to the great perfection. It seemed that his foundation was unstable, and his realm was unstable. It was difficult for his moves and routines to match the sudden improvement of his cultivation. However, in the continuous battle, everything was harmonious. In just a moment, regardless of his foundation, realm, or moves, they seemed to have been precipitated and tempered for hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of years. They were perfect. The situation of the battle also changed from being at a disadvantage at the beginning, to gradually recovering the situation, to being at a slight disadvantage, but attacking and defending, until they were evenly matched. Xiaoduo's speed of improvement was so fast that it made people flabbergasted and unable to believe it. This subtle feeling of witnessing the occurrence of a miracle with their own eyes made everyone feel that what they saw in front of them was absurd, but it was true. They never knew that the speed and extent of a person's cultivation could be so fast and so great. Looking at Xiaoduo, who was now fighting with the Tao ancestor and was not at a disadvantage at all, everyone felt that their worldview had been subverted. In other words, it had been subverted long ago. How many years had it been since Xiaoduo entered the Tao and cultivated? In terms of human time, it was only a total of more than 20 years. Even with the variation of the flow of time in the Tower of Emptiness, one day was 1,000 days, and 1 year was 1,000 years. All in all, it was only a few thousand years. However, his current cultivation was already on par with the Tao ancestor, the most powerful person in the world for countless years. This was not just a miracle. It should be called a miracle, a legend, a super legend. Xiaoduo's strength was still increasing, and his cultivation was also deepening. Now, his state was like a sea, and there was always the water of the Yangtze River pouring into it with a surging momentum, constantly strengthening the foundation of the sea. It was more and more surging, more and more like a raging tide. The sound of the collision between the hammer and the sword was still dense, but the body of the Tao ancestor was obviously trembling, and the expression on his face was unprecedentedly dignified. There was not much time left. Everyone had excellent eyesight, and they all saw that the Tao ancestor still had enough strength to support Xiaoduo's attack. Although it seemed that Xiaoduo now had the upper hand, it was still impossible to defeat the Tao ancestor in a short time. If the current situation continued, the two sides would be evenly matched. Another 3 days and 3 nights might not be enough to determine the winner. However, the power that sealed this space was only left with less than 10 minutes. The 1-hour time limit given by the Taiji diagram was about to pass. Once Dao Zhu regained his connection with the outside world, even if Xiaoduo had become the lord of a world, it would still be of no use as it was still too early. Because the Tao ancestor, who was free of the shackles, could mobilize the power of the entire ancestral land, which was beyond the power level of Xiaoduo's power. Thinking of this, Zhuo Chonglu, Wu Yuding, and Zhuo Xiaonian, who had just rested for 2 minutes and slightly recovered their vitality, took a step forward together. At the same time, the Demon Emperor, Demon Empress, and Dong Huang, the 3 giants of the Demon Clan, also took a step forward together. Flood and the 4 Zhu Wu also took a step forward. The auras of the 11 peerless experts merged into one and surged out together. Under the influence of the aura, even the Tao ancestor had to divert part of his energy to pay attention to their movements. But now, things were different. The situation was very different now. Just now, he could ignore it because the attack just now was not a threat to him at all. Naturally, he could handle it with ease. But now, there was Xiaoduo, an opponent who was comparable to him, restraining him head-on. The situation was unprecedentedly bad. Coupled with these powerful enemies on the other side, it was not only one disaster after another, but it was also in imminent danger. How could he not pay attention? Sua Xiaoduo felt that the spiritual aura in his body was boiling, and for a moment, he was in high spirits. But at the same time, he could not help but be anxious. Because he also knew that there was no way to determine the winner, and if this stalemate continued, his side would be finished. The time left for him was not much. According to the current situation of the battle, even if his parents and others joined the battle and participated in the siege, there was not enough time. Now, 51 minutes had passed, and there were only 9 minutes left before the shackles of this space would lose effect. At that time, everyone would die without a burial place. Xiao, Yun Zhonghu, Bai Yunduo, and Zhu Yan were still in the space of the Tower of Annihilation. If Xiao and Bai Yunduo came out at this time, not only would they not play a role in surprise, but they would also lose their lives in vain. As for Zhu Yan, Sua Xiaoduo thought about it again and again, and finally decided to call it out to help. It was not that Zhu Yan's cultivation was much stronger than Bai Yunduo and Xiao, and it was enough to change the situation of the battle, but Sua Xiaoduo felt that Zhu Yan had a strategic role, and the role it could play might be beyond imagination. That this was a gamble, but so far, the gamble with Zhu Yan as the wager had always been the victory of his side. This matter was mysterious, but the result was the same, and he had to admit it. At the very least, Zhu Yan's spiritual deterrence effect was strong enough. In view of this, Sua Xiaoduo's heart stirred. "Weaya!" Zhu Yan raised its mace and rushed out with a howl. The poison of misfortune was like a sharp poisonous arrow, shooting at the Dao ancestor with power. Bang! The Dao ancestor casually sent it flying with a palm, his face calm and without any change, as if he did not care at all. However, deep in his eyes, there was a sudden flash. Why was this unlucky thing here too? Back then, it was this bastard who suddenly appeared and caused the complete creation disk to only have a little core left. It was also the origin of the creation jade disk. This was the greatest jinx since the creation of the world, the greatest jinx since ancient times. The beast of misfortune. Nothing good happened to anyone who saw it, no exception. To actually encounter this thing in such a battle that would decide the world. How inauspicious. The Dao ancestor muttered in his heart. As everyone swarmed forward, the situation of the battle continued to tilt and was completely reversed. The Dao ancestor was suppressed to a disadvantage by the joint forces of everyone. This was still the strength of the others and Sua Xiaoduo, showing too great a gap. As for Sua Xiaoduo, it was because of an accident that his cultivation strength suddenly increased. Naturally, there was no such thing as rehearsing in advance, and the cooperation between them was very disjointed. Although the Dao ancestor was forced to a disadvantage, it was not to the extent that he was completely powerless to fight back. He resisted stubbornly and did not lose. Time passed bit by bit, and everyone became more and more anxious. There was almost not enough time. There were still the last 6 minutes. Although the outcome of a battle between experts was only in an instant, how could an undying and indestructible powerhouse like the Dao ancestor be resolved in an instant? As time passed bit by bit, the Dao ancestor became more and more accustomed to finding loopholes in everyone's cooperation and taking the opportunity to counterattack. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. More than a dozen shadows suddenly flashed from the Dao ancestor's body and flew to attack everyone. As for his true body, he took a step across space and arrived in front of Li Chenglong, grabbing at Li Chenglong's throat. This attack was bound to succeed. At this moment, the Dao ancestor was completely confident that this guy would definitely die under this attack of his. He had long calculated in his heart that the greatest difficulty in this battle was not Sua Xiaoduo's sudden increase in strength, but Li Chenglong, this guy, who was in overall control of the overall situation. It was his manipulation and command that made up for the gap in strength between everyone. Otherwise, someone would have died long ago. This guy's command was too accurate. He had to kill this guy as soon as possible. A hand instantly grabbed Li Chenglong's throat. Li Chenglong roared angrily and wanted to parry, but it was too late. The Dao ancestor's attack was too fast, too fast. Swish! Even if it was Swish Duo, it was already too late for him to save him. Just as he was feeling cold in his heart, an arrow, in an even more unexpected and abrupt manner, tore the space from the sky and turned the entire space from the sky to the earth into a black hole of eternal annihilation. Pai Bao, who had never made a move since the start of the battle, finally made a move. Facing an existence like the Dao ancestor, Pai Bao's attack was to gather all his soul and divine sense power and the limit of his cultivation. Because he knew that he only had a chance to shoot this arrow. It was not because there was no second chance against the Dao ancestor, but also because he had no combat power after this arrow. Therefore, Pai Bao had been waiting for this opportunity, afraid that he would miss it. He stood quietly in the void. Even though the battle below was extremely tragic, he still did not make a move. He watched as the experts on his side were sacrificed, but he did not make a move. Because he felt that it was not an opportunity. Previously, when the Dao ancestors' 6 clones were fighting, Pai Bao did not move at all. He did not even circulate his energy. He felt that it was useless to make a move. But now, he finally made a move. The opportunity was here. Even this time, he did not make a move to save Li Chenglong. But the real time was right. The Dao ancestor used his clones to force the others away. His true body rushed towards Li Chenglong. The target was pure and direct. There was no doubt about the effect. However, the process of this action was obviously too much. This attack that was bound to succeed would no longer deviate midway. Therefore, at this moment, Pai Bao gathered all his soul, divine sense, and cultivation. And shot down. The speed of this arrow surpassed everything. It even surpassed Swish Duo and the Dao ancestor who used all his strength. Once the arrow was shot, Pai Bao, who was in the air, no longer had any strength. He floated down weakly like a piece of paper. If no one caught him, he could even fall to his death. Because his entire person was now more empty than an empty shell. Within a year, he would not be able to make such an arrow a second time. The Dao ancestor's fingers had already felt the temperature of Li Chenglong's neck. Suddenly, the top of his head turned cold. Swoosh! An arrow pierced through the top of his head. Relying on a cultivator's instinct for danger, his body instinctively leaned back. However, this arrow had already entered his head. The pain at this moment could be said to be unprecedented. It was as if his soul was split. Even with the Dao ancestor's temperament, he could not help but roar to the sky. Li Chenglong did not know why he was able to escape death. However, with an astonishing reaction, he rolled over and dodged more than 100 feet away. However, he still felt a chill in his throat. Pai Bao's ultimate arrow was 3 feet long. At this moment, it was more than a foot into the Dao ancestor's head. However, it was the first time since the start of the battle that they had seriously injured the Dao ancestor's true body. It was an unprecedented injury. The Dao ancestor was in so much pain that he wanted to die. The auspicious clouds under his feet disappeared and gathered on his head. He wanted to recover quickly. Suddenly, he let out another roar. His thick cultivation base wrapped around his wound, and an arrow shot out from his head, mixed with red and white blood. It rushed into the sky. The Dao ancestor's face turned even paler. This arrow had actually used up all of his reserve potential, leaving nothing behind. Moreover, he was still seriously injured. At this moment, his hatred was incomparable. He was filled with anger. However, until now, he still did not know why there was this arrow. Why was there an enemy who was not under his perception? At a glance, he saw Pai Yibao, who was like a withered leaf. He could see his cultivation level at a glance, half-step sage. He was only a half-step sage. The Tao ancestor was extremely angry, but he was even more confused. Although a half-step sage cultivator was at the top level of cultivators in the world and had a chance to hurt him, to seriously injure him, there were at least 3 factors. None of them could be missing. Firstly, he did not know the existence of this person. He had never noticed it from the beginning to the end. Could such a person exist? Secondly, in order to hurt him, the other party had to integrate all his cultivation strength, life, and soul into one attack. Only then could it reach the level of injuring his Tao body. Thirdly, even if the above 2 conditions were met, the extreme outburst of a half-step saint would only be able to injure him. It would not be able to inflict serious injuries on him. This was because there would still be some energy left after breaking through his protective yuan qi. Even if he was injured, it would only be a flesh wound. However, just now, he had forced out several clones, forcefully pushed away all the enemies except Li Chenglong, and even wanted to kill them in one strike. He did not leave any leeway and used all his strength, causing his defensive power to drop to the lowest point. However, it was equivalent to helping the archer achieve the 3rd element that could severely injure him. This was really fucking wrong. When it came to it, after planning and scheming, the one who was schemed against was me. However, the most incomprehensible thing was, why did this bastard not have any aura at all? There was actually such a person in this world who did not have any sense of existence. As the Tao ancestor was unexpectedly seriously injured and exhausted all the potential he had reserved, the atmosphere of the battle became more and more cruel. Everyone kept attacking, and the Tao ancestor's counterattack became more and more ruthless. Every move he made was a fatal killing move. As time passed, the Tao ancestor was still holding on bitterly. He had to hold on. Once he could not hold on, he would still be defeated in this heaven's retribution. Hold on. There were only 3 minutes left in the shackles. There was no time. Everyone had already realized that even with Pai Yibao's unexpected arrow, which gave them a glimpse of hope, they would still have to pay a huge price if they really wanted to win. Life. The Flood Witch's eyes suddenly became deep. He quietly avoided the others, and at the same time, secretly raised his cultivation to loosen the lock of his divine sense. That was the preparation for self-explosion. Di Jiang Tianwu and Zhu Wu also subtly moved under their feet. Sui Changlu's eyes flickered, and he quietly moved to one side, not showing his strength. However, Wu Yuding saw his move. Mother Zhua did not stop him, but chose to move to the other side at the same time. Lonely in the netherworld, how can I let you go alone? Even if you are destined to die, you will still have my company. Outside the arena, Yu Xingchen glanced at Zhua Changlu's face. As old friends and brothers, how could he not see through Zhua Changlu's intention? With a wild roar, Dong Huang was about to rush forward, but a figure was faster than him, so fast that it overtook him. Dong Huang's thought was very simple. His brother and sister-in-law were deeply in love, and if one of them died, the other would not live alone. He was a bachelor, and if he died, it would be better than letting any of them die. Therefore, Dong Huang was already prepared. However, the one who was prepared earlier and acted faster than him was Demon Master Kunpeng. After so many years of interaction, Demon Master Kunpeng admired Dong Huang the most, and the one he was most grateful to was also Dong Huang. Even more than the respect he had for the Demon Emperor. He and Dong Huang were both friends and teacher, and they knew each other very well. This kind of situation was already very clear. Someone had to be sacrificed in order to achieve the set goal. Therefore, he came to a certain conclusion. The first one to be sacrificed must be Dong Huang. It must be him. This was because Dong Huang's temperament and style of doing things had always been like this. Dong Huang would never allow his brother and sister-in-law to die in front of him. Therefore, when Kuan Ping discovered East Emperor's subtle movement, it instantly burned its soul, potential, spiritual mind and everything else. Then, it flew up at the fastest speed in its entire life and rushed over there silently. Translator, WQL Editor, Alim He overtook Dong Huang and rushed to the front of Dong Huang. The demon race could do without Kuan Ping, but they could not do without Dong Huang. If there was a choice, of course, I would die to protect His Majesty Dong Huang. He thought so in his heart, but he did not shout. Because he knew that if he shouted, Dong Huang would never let him die. Even if he was one step ahead, he would still stop him. Even if he knew it was a futile attempt, he would still try. Therefore, Kuan Ping Demon Master directly took the lead silently. He was one step ahead of Dong Huang and faced the Tao ancestor directly. With a boom, the blue flame that burned the soul turned into a blue flowing light, swept through the crowd, and rushed into the battle between Zhuo Xiaoduo and the Tao ancestor. In the process of rushing to the Tao ancestor, he launched the most extreme self-explosion. The reason why he did this was that Kuan Ping knew that after the previous sneak attack, the Tao ancestor was stubbornly defending himself, intending to delay the last bit of time. He used more than 70% of his strength to defend himself. It was impossible to rush over with his own strength. It was simply wishful thinking to hug the Tao ancestor and then self-explode. Perhaps Dong Huang, whose cultivation was higher, could do it, but it was impossible for him to do it. With a loud explosion, thick smoke rose in all directions. Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding were ready to rush. Because the two of them knew that Kuan Ping Demon Master's self-explosion alone could not kill the Tao ancestor. However, at this moment, two more figures rushed in without hesitation. They rushed into the shattered space caused by the explosion. The two of them did not say a word. They did not even let people see who they were before they rushed in. The two of them stood side by side, burning their souls, potential, divine senses, and everything. They rushed to the Tao ancestor, who was staggered by Kuan Peng's self-explosion. There was another loud boom, Yu Xingqian. Lei Changtian. These two seniors who had protected the human clan for tens of thousands of years, the peak of the human clan, did not even leave a word. They self-exploded to meet their deaths. Although they didn't say a word, everyone understood what they meant. Wu people of the demon clan had heroes who met their deaths. Did the human clan not have brave people? Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding were ready to self-explode. But Zhuo Chonglu could not die. Wu Yuding could not die. Let us do it. They are much more important than me, and I have nothing left to live for. If either of them self-exploded, Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian would have a mental breakdown. That would be the end of the human clan. In that case, let me do it. This is Yu Xingqian. My daughter can't die. My son-in-law can't die. My boss can't die. My grandson and granddaughter-in-law can't die. If one of us has to sacrifice in exchange for victory, who else can I do it? This is Lei Changtian. When he saw Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding's secret movements, Lei Changtian quickly made up his mind. In fact, he had already made preparations to sacrifice his life long before this. Lei Changtian did not feel regret about his death at this moment. Instead, he felt a little excited. Boss, this time you can't beat me. Ha ha ha. 3 people self-exploded in succession. 1 monster and 2 people risked their lives to defeat the enemy. The Tao ancestor was covered in blood and flesh. There were many wounds on his face. It was a ghastly sight. However, his injuries were not that serious. All the injuries added together were not as serious as the injuries caused by Pai Yibao's arrow. It was not only because he used more than 70% of his cultivation to protect himself, but also because a floating gourd floated in front of him. A purple gourd. A pure purple gourd, mysterious and noble. However, this purple gourd was unable to withstand the extreme self-detonation of 3 top experts. It was covered in cracks and riddled with holes. The little baby that could barely maintain its human form was on the verge of death, as if it would die at any moment. Wu Yuding and Zhou Chongluk shouted in grief and indignation, "Bastard! Who allowed you to go?" Zhou Xiaoduo was extremely angry. He waved his sledgehammer and rushed forward. With a light swish, the 8 gourds, led by the purple gold gourd, appeared at the same time. They moved over as if they had teleported, and surrounded the purple gold gourd. Then, the 9 gourds disappeared together. The purple gourd that helped the Tao ancestor withstand the self-explosion of the 3 top experts was the boss of all the gourds. It was also one of the trump cards that the Tao ancestor had kept for a long time. It had not appeared since the beginning of the battle. The purple gourd was the boss of all the gourds. Its power was beyond its peers. In addition, it had been carefully refined by the Tao ancestor for hundreds of millions of years. Its power was so great that even a sage-to-be might not be able to withstand a blow from it. It was because of this that Zhou Xiaoduo did not activate the gourds to help in the battle, no matter how critical the battle was. The result of suddenly using the gourds to help in the battle was that the Tao ancestor would take away all the gourds. The situation would take a turn for the worse and get out of hand. Now, the Tao ancestor was trapped in the self-explosion of the 3 top experts and was forced to use the purple gourd to protect himself. Although he succeeded in escaping, the purple gourd was also seriously injured. Its power was less than 100%. It was wrapped by the gourds and returned to the space of the Tower of Emptiness. At this point, the 9 innate gourds, which had no hope of reuniting, were finally gathered. Seeing the 3 top experts die, Zhou Xiaoduo, who was in so much pain that he wanted to die, waved his sledgehammer hundreds of times crazily, smashing the Tao ancestor until he staggered and lost his image. However, the ragged wounds on the Tao ancestor's body were gradually wriggling and recovering. The power of the 3 people's self-explosion was undeniable, but more than 70% of the power was borne by the purple gourd. In addition, their level was too far away from the Tao ancestor. Although they succeeded in causing more injuries to the Tao ancestor, the injuries were not serious. Instead, they were getting better. When everyone saw that the Tao ancestor's injuries were gradually getting better, ancestral sorcerer Dijiang leaped out. In his eyes, there was only shame. He used to believe in the Tao ancestor so much. He almost fell out with everyone for the sake of whether the Tao ancestor would do this. But he was wrong. Ancestral sorcerer Dijiang only felt that he was too foolish. "Boss, I'll do it." Zhu Wu Tian Zhu Wu gritted his teeth and pulled Dijiang Zhu Wu. Dijiang snorted and said, "You are not good at the power of space. At this moment, you must use the power of space of the highest level to be able to bind him. Otherwise, no matter how much you self-explode, it will only make him more injured. With his cultivation, he will recover soon. And now there is not much time. If you want to succeed, you must use the extreme method." Hearing this, the Flood Witch, who was about to rush out, was stunned. Yes. If that was the case, the so-called sacrifice was meaningless. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Dong Huang said angrily. If he had said so earlier, Kuanping would not have to die. Dijiang Zhu Wu said indifferently, "Do you think you don't need any preparation to use the power of space of the highest level?" When I was preparing, you rushed forward. And, even if I had said so earlier, I couldn't have stopped it. You know why they did so. He wasn't wrong. Strictly speaking, these three people did not lack the opportunity to kill the Tao ancestor with their own lives, but they knew that their chances were slim. Their real purpose was more to not let the people they cared about die. Based on this intention, it would be best if they could kill the Tao ancestor, but if they could not, then they could not kill him. It was better to self-explode first than to let the people they cared about rush forward and risk their lives. If their expectations came true, it would be too late to regret for the rest of their lives. Dijiang Zhu Wu, who had accumulated enough power, flashed out. Like the previous three people, Zhu Wu's whole body and mind were burning. With the addition of the ancestral sorcerer's secret method, Dijiang's overall strength was 3 times stronger than normal. In a flash, he was already in the battle situation. The power of space was activated to the maximum extent. However, Tao ancestor seemed to have predicted that Dijiang would do this. His entire body suddenly turned into specks of stars, and like water, he floated and rippled in the entire space. It could be said that he was everywhere, but nowhere at the same time. Dijiang, don't even think about it. When ancestral magus Tianwu saw this scene, he rushed forward with reddened eyes. Boss. Good brother, let's go together. There was another soft sigh. A woman in white quietly appeared behind the Tao ancestor and reached out. The space, which was originally filled with the power of space, was reborn and suddenly solidified. The flowing figure of the Tao ancestor was also fixed. The woman bowed, and her pretty face was full of sadness. Brothers, have a safe journey. It was Hoodie Zhu Wu who came quietly and intervened in this battle. This powerful figure of the Wu people, who had turned into reincarnation, once said that she would never meddle in the affairs of the mortal world again. But in today's battle, she still came and even joined the battle to restrain the Tao ancestor. Ha ha ha. Dijiang and Tian Wu laughed. Thank you for your help, sister. The two ancestral sorcerers gathered together and took advantage of the situation. They turned all their power into a whirlwind of death and sucked the space that was condensed by the ancestral sorcerer Hudu into their bodies. Then they exploded. Boom! The heroic laughter was still echoing in their ears, but the explosion that shook the universe had already sounded unprecedentedly. With a loud boom, everyone was forcefully pushed back several thousand feet by this unprecedented explosive force. All the space in the center was exploded into a black hole. However, the two Zhu Wu had completely disappeared at this time and no longer existed in the world. The few people closest to the explosion couldn't help but bear part of the aftershock. Blood flowed out of their mouths, and their ears were full of rumbling. Everyone's eyes were red. In less than 100 breaths, 5 masters exploded one after another. This kind of tragedy was truly heart-wrenching. But now, it was not the time to show grief. Under such an extreme self-explosion, was the Tao ancestor still alive? If he still didn't die like this. Just as everyone was muttering in their hearts, they suddenly found that at the center of the explosion. In the black hole where all the space had not recovered yet. There was actually a faint light that flickered unpredictably. Gradually, a broken figure quietly emerged from the faint light. It was the Tao ancestor. At this moment, he looked unprecedentedly bleak. His body was broken, his hands and feet were gone, his chest and back were blown open in many places, and half of his head was blown away. But he was still alive. Not only was he still alive, but the damage on his body was also slowly recovering. Although it was not as fast as before, it was still recovering, really recovering. At this moment, Zhuxiaoyan's ice flame and Zhuxiaodua's primordial fire poured into the Tao ancestor's broken body, converging and exploding. The Tao ancestor let out a roar. At this moment, his 5 forms were incomplete, and his whole body was broken. This roar was the sound of his soul. Everyone present felt a wave of confusion in their minds. This roar had the effect of shaking the soul. He was already so injured, but he still had the ability to attack the enemy. And under such a soul attack, no one could resist it. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared, and as soon as he appeared in the broken black hole space. The person who came was dressed in black, tall and straight. His hair was loose, and the demonic aura around him surged. He held a spear in his hand. That was the god-killing spear. It was the creation jade disc. You have been looking for this. The Tao ancestor laughed faintly. Take it and complete it. When I wake up in the future, I will find you and get it back. Zhuo Xiaoduo grabbed it in his hand and said faintly, I want to see if you have the ability in the future. The Tao ancestor smiled faintly. His eyes finally turned and looked at Zhu Yan, who was in a daze in the distance, and said faintly, encountering this thing. Indeed, it. Before he finished speaking, he finally dissipated completely in the air. At this point, the great battle of the century finally ended. Suddenly, the space shook inexplicably. It was the tattered Taiji diagram that fell from the sky. The energy of the Taiji diagram was almost exhausted. At most, there was only a trace left. After all, there were less than 10 seconds left before the end of the great battle. The danger of this battle had reached the extreme. Although everyone had won a great victory, none of them were happy. They were all heartbroken. The losses in this battle were truly too great. 6 ancestral sorcerers and 2 senior sorcerers of the sorcerer clan died in the battle. On the human side, the star-plucking celestial emperor Lei Changtian died. The demon race also lost the Kuan-Ping demon master. Apart from them, Chansheng was the first to die. Gong Gong Zhu Wu and Xian Ming Zhu Wu were the only ones left. They were trembling, kneeling on the ground with tears streaming down their faces. Of the 8 Zhu Wu, only 2 were left. The Flood Witch, the Raging Fire Witch, and the Dark Ice Witch walked over with heavy faces. Seniors are worthy of respect. Great Flood Witch's throat moved a few times and said, but why? Gong Gong Zhu Wu understood his meaning. He took a deep breath and said, we are Zhu Wu. We were saved by you, so we owe you. Also, we made the wrong decision in the battle, which damaged the fate of the Wu people. In the end, we made a huge mistake, which made the Tao ancestor wrong. If we want to die, we should be the first to die. Tears flowed down Gong Gong Zhu Wu's face. Also, we are called Zhu Wu, but we can only go so far in our cultivation. We can't go any further. But you have a chance to go further. You have a greater chance to reach the peak. So, no matter how unhappy we are, we will never let you die. With us standing in the way, if the juniors still have to die, how can we afford to lose face? Flood and the others were silent for a while, then said, seniors deserve our respect. People were looking around in silence. Low sobbing sounds could be heard. They were Wu Yuding and Zhuo Xiaoyan. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt like his heart was weighed down by lead. The battle was over. But Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't feel relaxed at all. Indeed, this battle had been too fierce and bitter. Demon ancestor Rahu came to Zhuo Xiaoduo. I hope you will keep your promise. Zhuo Xiaoduo nodded and said in a deep voice, how long will the Tao ancestor die this time? Demon ancestor could be said to be the one who understood the Tao ancestor the most. He was the last person to send the Tao ancestor off. Naturally, he had the most right to speak. Demon Ancestor Rahu said indifferently, at least. He won't wake up for tens of millions of years. Tens of millions of years. Xiao Duo calculated and said, that should be enough. Demon Ancestor nodded. In that case, I'll take my leave. Before his voice died away, his figure flashed and disappeared. Everyone was trying in vain to find the remains of their dead comrades. However, after searching the entire space, other than the rock demon master who still had some pieces of flesh left behind, the others actually didn't leave anything behind. Everyone. Zhou Chonglu's eyes were red. He tried his best to suppress his emotions and said, let's go back first. We'll deal with the funeral of our brothers. We'll meet again in a month to discuss important matters. How about that? Okay. Okay. Everyone had sorrowful expressions on their faces, and their hearts were abnormally heavy. Moreover, all of them were heavily injured and urgently needed to be treated. Victory. But this victory was so heavy. No one was even in the mood to celebrate this hard-won victory. It was really too tragic that it was a feeling that even if they died, it would be much better than the feeling now. Zhou Xiaoyan leaned into Zhou Xiaoduo's arms and cried until the sky turned dark. Everyone went back one by one. They didn't even greet each other. The demons left first. They left quietly. Wu people left later. But they didn't even say goodbye. In the next month, the entire continent fell into an unprecedentedly oppressive atmosphere. No one dared to speak loudly. The Celestial Emperor, Heavenly King Yu, and Lord Lei Chongtian had left one after another. Lord Devil Ancestor Lei Chongtian had also perished in this battle. The atmosphere on the Star Soul human tribe side had dropped below freezing point. Even after a month of buffer time, they still couldn't walk out of this oppressive atmosphere. In the blink of an eye, the appointed time arrived. The higher-ups of the three clans gathered at the peak. Everyone gathered together this time. There was no suspense, and there were no more disputes. In this battle, Zhou Xiaoduo was the key to this battle. Not only did he force the Dao Ancestor to a draw, but he even had the upper hand. His strength was obvious to all. Not to mention other things, just with this strength, it was simply stupid for the shamans and demons to start a war to defeat the humans and obtain the position of dominator. The sorcerer tribe and the demon tribe had been fighting against each other since the primitive times. They knew the importance of strength, so they had long given up the idea of fighting against the human tribe. This time, not only the higher-ups of the three clans, but also the higher-ups of all the clans on the continent. Demon Ancestor Luo Ho also came. The Spirit Clan, Spirit Emperor, and Wan Mingxing also came. Previously, they were persuaded by the Dao Ancestor to fight in the war and fight for the protagonists of the world. In fact, the Spirit Clan was the final winner of the Clear Heaven Tribulation that the Dao Ancestor liked the most. Zhou Xiaoduo's luck was monstrous and unparalleled, but the creation plate that he collected was the key to the Dao Ancestor's future breakthrough. It was something that the Dao Ancestor had to get. Because of this, the Dao Ancestor knew that there would be a final battle in the Blood Sea space, but he still participated. On the one hand, the Dao Ancestor was very confident in his own strength. On the other hand, he was afraid that Zhou Xiaoduo's luck was too strong. If he gave him enough time to advance, he might advance to the same level as him one day. Even if it was only a complete world in one hand, the Dao Ancestor could not accept it. Because if one world was complete, the Dao Ancestor would not have the possibility to kill Zhou Xiaoduo. Therefore, the final battle was the plan of the three clans to jointly eliminate the Dao Ancestor. At the same time, it was also the Dao Ancestor's counterattack. Unfortunately, there were many unforeseen events in the final battle. Not only did space wizard Dan Kong sacrifice himself in exchange for Zhou Xiaoduo's complete small worlds, but also Zhu Wuhutu reappeared and restrained the Dao ancestor with immeasurable merits. In addition, the demon ancestor betrayed the Dao ancestor in the end, which caused the Dao ancestor to suffer a crushing defeat and die. On that day, the situation was stronger than the person. The Spirit Emperor agreed to the Dao ancestor's kindness, but he also used the reason of mobilizing the army to delay the battle for 10 days. After 10 days, the situation changed again. Everything was settled, and the so-called war hegemony became yesterday's story. But also because of this, the Spirit Clan suffered the least damage in the Clear Heaven tribulation. They almost did not participate in the battle from the beginning to the end. The Demon Clan and the Wu people were sincerely envious of the Spirit Clan's complete state. They were too lucky. The Spirit Emperor looked at Wan Mingxing with gratitude. If Wan Mingxing did not try his best to stop them, the Spirit Clan would not be able to avoid being involved in this catastrophe no matter what considerations they had. And as long as a single group of soldiers entered the battlefield and caused any casualties, the astral small bodies would immediately lead to the destruction of their entire race. Look, the Human Clan, the Demon Clan, the Wu people, the Demon Clan. Even if these 4 clans suffered heavy casualties, they still could not afford to offend any of them. The Demon Clan will leave this world in 3 days. All the Demon Clan above the flying heavens will be taken away. The Demon Emperor Dijuan was very straightforward. But those below the flying heavens will still stay in this world as the natives of this world. This was something that could not be helped. Even if the He Tu and the Book of the Luo could carry the Demon Clan, they could not take away all the Demon Clan. Naturally, they could only take away the Demon Clan whose cultivation had reached a certain level. Okay. Sui Changlu nodded. In addition, I hope that a part of the Demon Clan will bring the Demon Clan's inheritance into Xiao Duo's world. This part will be led by the Azure Dragon, the Black Tortoise, the Vermilion Bird, and the White Tiger. This part of the Demon Clan will number about 30 million. Is it possible? Dong Wang looked at Sui Xiaoduo. No problem at all. Sui Xiaoduo thought for a moment. As for the matter of the Demon Clan moving into the worldlet, he had already discussed it with Xiao Long and Xiao Yiqiong. The new world was complete, and it was vast and sparsely populated. With so many demon clans moving in, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. Even if there was a follow-up, Xiao Xiao would be responsible for the coordination. Sui Xiaoduo did not need to worry about it. Well, after these demon clan people enter the new world, their future will depend on their own luck. The demon emperor sighed. The Wu people will leave in 7 days. Flood said, on our side, 30 million Wu people will also enter the new world. The leaders are Hai Hunshan, Thundercat, Shadiao, and the others. And these are your brothers. This. I have no choice. The demon emperor glanced at Flood and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The Wu people really had to compete with the demon clan at all times. He originally thought that because of his relationship with Xiao, he would have a foundation in the new world. He didn't expect the Wu people to be even more ruthless. Not only did they pull him out, but they also made so many brothers. But there's one thing I want to say. The Astral Souls human clan will not enter the new world. I will make some natives. Also, I will not participate in the management of the new world. Everyone will have to rely on their own abilities to survive in the new world. There will be no favoritism. Sui Xiaoduo said. Of course. How can the god of creation personally go into battle? Everyone expressed their understanding. That was how it should be. Demon ancestor Rahu said indifferently, I intend to send some of the invisible inner demons into the new world. As for the demons outside, Let them all be destroyed. I'm too lazy to take them to conquer the world. They're too ugly, too dirty, too smelly. They haven't even developed a fart in a million years. They can't even create a shadow of civilization. What harm is there in killing such a race? The demon ancestor was decisive, but his expression was unprecedentedly gloomy. Everyone was stunned, but they couldn't help but want to laugh. Demon ancestor Rahu sighed. He couldn't help but feel depressed. He was also a race that had developed since ancient times. Look at the demon clan. At least they had reached a certain scale and had their own inventions. There was no need to mention the Wu people. They had already been modernized. The most awesome race was still the human clan. They had even developed to the point where as long as you had money, you could do everything in bed. Of course, this kind of behavior was not encouraged. However, after living in the human world for a few days, demon ancestor Rahu felt more and more that the demon clan was incurable. They were incorrigible and useless. Not to mention anything else, just the stench on their bodies made it impossible for them to even invent perfume. It was simply unimaginable. Demon ancestor Rahu was a heartless person. Naturally, there was nothing he couldn't give up. Not to mention, he hated the demon clans so much. It was only natural that he would give up on them. As for the demon clan, Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. Wan Minsheng had been trying to enlighten the demon clan in the demon spirit forest for countless years. However, he hadn't achieved anything. He had even almost suffered a backlash. If it weren't for Zhang Juan's accidental involvement, the demon spirit elders would have chosen Elder Wan as their sacrifice. Whether they had the strength to take down Elder Wan was one thing, but Elder Wan had the qualifications to lead the demon clan back. This was beyond doubt. Can you help me eliminate the demon clan before you leave? Following the principle of, since you're leaving, it'd be a waste not to use them, Zhuo Xiaoduo, who had always been lazy, asked Demon Emperor Jun and Gonggong Zhu Wu. This is no problem. The two leaders were happy to help. Humans were about to become the dominators. Obviously, they didn't want their hands to be stained with the blood of other creatures. Therefore, they wanted to let their two races leave with the sin of slaughtering an entire race. However, this wasn't a problem for the two senior executioners who had tens of millions of years of experience. Not to mention, they hated the demon clans so much that they wanted to kill them whenever they saw them. The monster clan and Wu people who enter the new world can first live in a separate city. After all, the new world is only in its early stages. It'll take at least half a year to a year. After that, they can live a normal life. Zhuo Xiaoduo estimated the flow of time in the Tower of Annihilation. Well, Zhuo Xiaoduo had officially renamed the Tower of Annihilation as the Tianzhua Galaxy. Yes, it was a galaxy. After the compass of creation was completed and the old view was repeated, Xiaolong excitedly told Zhuo Xiaoduo that the current world of the Tower of Annihilation was no longer a separate small world. Now, it was a developing world, and it was an embryonic world with infinite possibilities. With the emergence of talents in this space, its fate would continue to increase. After seizing the fate of the heavens, it would slowly develop and expand beyond imagination. Therefore, Zhuo Xiaoduo simply named his small world as a galaxy. What if it really developed into a greater world in the future? Then wouldn't I, the great Zhuo god of creation, be awesome? There were some dreams that one could still dream about. For Zhuo Xiaoduo, who dreamed of being the grandson of the Sky Patrol Minister when he had nothing, this fantasy was just a drizzle. After all, there were already successful precedents. Although the Tianzhua galaxy could only be called the Tianzhua continent, it was about to take shape. However, this didn't stop Zhuo Xiaoduo from looking forward to the infinite future. The Demon Emperor and Zhu Wu didn't have any objections to Zhuoxiaoduo's half a year's time. Half a year it was. What did this amount of time count for? They still believed in Zhuoxiaoduo's promise. In fact, they were somewhat envious of the juniors who were about to enter the Tianzhua galaxy. This was because the things that Zhuoxiaoduo revealed had shown them the infinite possibilities of the Tianzhua galaxy. It was much more promising than their current home world. The upper limit of development was also much higher. However, they couldn't bring themselves to do so. Secondly, they were all proud people. This time, they were going to explore the universe without any restraints. Could it be that they couldn't become the master of another world? Perhaps they could reach the same level of achievement as Zhuoxiaoduo one day. They could open up a new world and become the god of creation. How great would that be? Gonggong, the Xianming flood, Emperor Juntai, and company all had such thoughts. Even fiend ancestor Rahu had such plans. Open up a new world. Become the god of creation. This was their future path. This was their goal for a very, very long time to come. Wan Minxing looked at Zhuoxiaoduo with some apprehension. Friend Zhuoxiaoduo, the spirit race. Zhuoxiaoduo said straightforwardly, the spirit race will not commit the sin of killing. We can follow the example of the Tao League and integrate the humans into the astral souls. We can also bring our inheritances into the new world. Anything is fine. Zhuoxiaoduo was very generous towards the spirit race. The Spirit Emperor and Wan Minxing laughed bitterly. The entire race entering the new world. This was definitely a good thing, an extremely good thing. However, the spirit race wasn't so thick-skinned. Apart from the higher-ups, we are willing to disperse the humans into the astral souls and help them rebuild the ancestral land. As for the new world, let's send 50 million people. The Spirit Emperor's words were filled with embarrassment. After all, this number was already 20 million more than the Wu people and the Yao race. It was a bit of an advantage. However, the Spirit Emperor and Zhu Wu didn't hold any grudges against this at all. The spirit race's fighting strength was far inferior. Even if they sent in 20 million more people, they could only protect themselves. When the new world developed in the future, it was still unknown whether these 20 million spirit race people could survive. In fact, to Zhuoxiaoduo, whether the spirit race fully integrated into the astral souls or entered the new world, it was a very good thing. Based on the current situation, the humans were strong while the spirit race were weak. The spirit race had become a vassal of the humans. In the future, the spirit race would definitely become the human cultivators' cultivation partners. Just this point alone was something that the Yao race and the Wu people couldn't compare to. As for the 50 million spirit race people entering the new world, Zhuoxiaoduo felt that it was a bit too little. The new world had just been established, and it needed the greater 1,000 creatures. The spirit race mainly lived on flowers and trees, and they were much more adaptable to the environment than the shaman and Yao race. As for the higher-ups, it was inevitable that they would still have to leave the new world. Next, everything was settled, and the various races began to celebrate the long-lasting peace that was about to come. Demon ancestor Rahu didn't participate in this celebration. He only scattered a part of the heart demon of the first generation to Zhuoxiaoduo. He didn't care whether Zhuoxiaoduo would really fulfill his promise or not. He just crossed the starry sky and left. The demon ancestor knew that no one would really welcome him, including Zhuoxiaoduo. If the situation wasn't so critical, they wouldn't have chosen to cooperate with him. Demon ancestor Rahu was very tactful. In addition, he didn't want to be associated with most people. Naturally, he left in a carefree manner. As for the future, he didn't care about the demon race or the heart demon. He could do whatever he wanted. The Tao ancestor had said that Tao and demon couldn't coexist, but they were also two sides of the same coin. As long as the Tao ancestor didn't die, the demon ancestor wouldn't die. Tao was eternal, and so was the origin of the demon race. The heart demon was the heart, and the demon was born from the heart. How could it not be long? When he left, the god-killing spear called Yen Shirsi over. Then, he ordered Yen Shirsi to transform into his human form and stand at attention. He slapped Yen Shirsi more than 10 times. Yen Shirsi was slapped until he spun like a top. However, he was very excited. Each slap was an inheritance. The god-killing spear used this method to leave his inheritance and gave it to Yen Shirsi. Traitor. Do well. Traitor. Become stronger. Traitor. Was it good? Good. That after the war, the entire continent was in ruins. Less than 10% of the population of each race was left. Everywhere was desolate. As the war came to an end, white banners were everywhere. Almost every family was wearing mourning clothes. Monuments rose from the ground one after another. They commemorated the heroes and martyrs who had sacrificed themselves in the past few years. At the front line, it was a different scene. All of a sudden, the people of the Wu tribe became very popular. The experts of the demon race invited them to drink, and the human race also invited them to drink. They were all old rivals who had fought with their lives for so many years. Now that they were going to leave forever, it was reasonable for them to send each other off. However, they had to drink this farewell wine no matter what. Although the humans of the astral souls were comrades who had passed away, at this moment, they had to deal with these guys first. After all, if they left, they would be done once and for all. They were willing to leave this period of time and leave behind some memories. During this period, Suishao Duo had to train with the Flood Witch almost every day. They continued to exchange pointers, continue to exchange blows, and continue to exchange their insights. The Flood Witch was very emotional. I didn't expect that the biggest opportunity in my life was to be given a godson when I was transforming into the mortal world. Suishaonian and Suishao Duo were still like before. One of them poured in the luck of the flood, while the other drew out the luck of the Flood Witch. However, as Suishao Duo became the new god of creation, his providence increased exponentially, and the amount of providence that Suishaonian absorbed was negligible. Thanks to this, the Great Witch of the Flood could be said to have advanced very quickly. In just a few days, he had advanced by leaps and bounds to the peak of the wizard ancestor level. He was only half a step away from breaking through. I don't have much time left. I'll leave the rest to the starry sky. I just want to drink now. The Flood Witch was full of reluctance. Your father and I need to drink more. After this farewell, I don't know if we can see each other again. On the other side, Gong Gong, Xian Ming, and Hudu were sitting together. Sister, come with us. The clear heaven tribulation is over. The old rules of order in this world are gone. Half of the 6 paths of reincarnation is gone. It's futile to maintain it. Besides, the Tao ancestor will definitely recover in the future. You have karma with him because of the previous battle. By then. It's okay. Hudu was very calm. When the 6 paths of reincarnation was established, I was no longer a magus. I only controlled the 6 paths of reincarnation. When the ancestral land was split, the great Tao was in chaos. That was why the 6 paths of reincarnation became chaotic and disappeared. Now, as the world is restored, the ancestral land is restored, and the 6 paths of reincarnation is also recovering. The 6 paths of reincarnation is me, and I am the 6 paths of reincarnation. We are inseparable. It was my heart at the beginning, and it is still the same now. As for the karma of the Tao ancestor, you don't have to worry about it. He has been following the great Tao all his life. However, in the last battle, what he did was against the great Tao. I joined the battle because I followed the great Tao. Why should he blame me? Don't worry. Huti said calmly, I'm willing to protect all living creatures in this land. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, souls to Hutu. I'm not just talking about it. I'll watch over their souls, and they'll be reincarnated. I hope that all the people in this world can have a hope and a fantasy, no matter rich or poor. I hope that in this world, good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be punished with evil. In this life and the next life, karma will not be satisfied. Besides, I want to guard the resting place of my brothers. If we all leave, I'm afraid that my brothers will be lonely. Gong Gong and Xian Ming raised their heads and sighed. All right. The fragrance spread for thousands of miles. The wine flowed over the 9 continents. On this day the leaders of the other continents were all dressed neatly. They gathered before the graves of the heroes who had died in the last battle. Brothers. Gong Gong Zhu Wu and the flood which almost choked with sobs. We're leaving now. They wanted to say goodbye, but they felt their throats were choked. They couldn't say a word. At this moment, the invincible powerful beings who had dominated the starry sky couldn't even say a word. Those powerful beings who didn't even bat an eyelid were now crying. They were sad. The smell of incense and candles covered the sky. All the powerful beings bowed to show their respect, their faces solemn. Demon Empress Shihi hugged Xiao Xiao tightly, her tears falling like rain. Yiqiong, you have to be good. Mother. You and father. Take care. He too and Luo Shu unfolded. The demon emperor, Dong Huang, and the demon empress floated up, carrying the He Tu and Luo Shu with their people. They slowly soared into the sky. The 3 of them kept waving their hands. Demon Empress Shihi's beautiful eyes locked on Xiao Zhao's face. Her tears fell like beads from a broken necklace. My son. You have to be good. Mother. Kneeling on the ground, Xiao looked up with tears streaming down his face. His mother's tears fell from the sky and dripped on his face. He gently stroked them with his hands and put them into his mouth. That it was so sour, but so sweet. It was an indescribable taste that would be etched in his heart forever. Mother. Xiao burst into tears. In the sky, Emperor Jun let out a long sigh. He held Shihi in his arms and waved his hand. The 2 of them turned into shooting stars and quickly disappeared into the sky. The monsters left. Then it was the Wu people. The flood which stood in front of Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian, smiling. I wanted to wait for your children's 1-month-old celebration before leaving. But you are such a disappointment. Zhuo Xiaonian blushed instantly. She stomped her feet. Godfather. Flood laughed. Let's go, let's go. Don't be annoying. He waved his hand casually. Zhu Wu, Lai Hua, Bing Ming, and the others soared into the sky and soared into the sky. The Wu people left very casually. In less than 10 breaths, they all disappeared. Flood is really straightforward. Zhuo Chonglu felt a little regretful. He said, he didn't even shed a tear. Although they were in a heavy mood, they couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. Yun Zhonghu and Bai Yunduo stood on the side, leaning against each other. Among everyone, perhaps only the 2 of them were the most relaxed. They even felt a little happy. Bai Yunduo was pregnant. They went to Yu Dongtian's tomb to report. Without Brother Fishy, they would have turned into ashes. As for the child, it was even more impossible. Yun Jonghu and Bai Yun Duo simply built a house in front of Yu Dongtian's tomb. They lived here and accompanied Brother Fishy for a long time. Perhaps, if I got closer, he would be able to shift the blame to me if he caused trouble in that unknown world. This was Yun Jonghu's most ardent wish recently. However, everyone in the team was working hard to cultivate and improve. They were not inferior to when they were preparing for the Tao ancestor. Now the boss has taken a big step forward. We must work hard. Our next path is to transcend this world. Travel the starry sky with the boss. Become the creator of the world. Create our own world. We can't let the boss monopolize the limelight. Except for one person, Li Chenglong was working hard in another direction. The cave abode of Yingzhou that he had obtained in the Crown Prince's Academy was also cultivated as a prototype world. Li Chenglong had never forgotten the oath he made back then. If I succeed in my cultivation, I will definitely make the ordinary plants in the world have the ability to transform into spirits. This was Li Chenglong's promise. He was also working hard in this direction. He wanted to make this wish come true in his new world. But everyone was already clear in their hearts. In the current world, it is impossible to get enough opportunities to create a new world. Sua's experience can't be replicated. Even if there are opportunities, they are in the starry sky. We need to fight for them and obtain them. Everyone was ready to go to the starry sky. Sua Chonglu and his wife were also working hard. Now that the human race in the astral souls was the dominant race, the heavy responsibility of protecting the human race could finally be relieved. Compared to staying here, how could it be more comfortable to transcend this world and travel the starry sky with their son and daughter? Wu Yuding wanted to help Sua Xiao Duo coax their child. Time would not stop for anyone or anything. It would fade away bit by bit. 9 months later, Yun Jonghu and his wife held a big banquet. Their son was born. Everyone was gathered together in a lively and bustling manner. Yun Jonghu held the child and respectfully asked Sua Chonglu to name him. Sua Chonglu and Wu Yuding glanced at Sua Xiao Duo and Sua Xiaonian from the corner of their eyes. Let Xiao Duo and little Nian name him. Wu Yuding snorted and said, "Look at how cute the child is." Sua Xiaonian looked at him with a red face and couldn't help but love him. She cheered and hugged him in her arms. She smiled and said, "This is so fun." Wu Yuding was speechless. "Then why don't you give birth to one for fun?" Sua Xiaonian blushed and stomped her feet. "Mom, you have to ask your son-in-law." Sua Xiao Duo rolled his eyes and pretended not to hear anything. He drank with Li Chenglong. However, the matter of naming was still brought up. Sua Xiao Duo racked his brains and said modestly, "How about Yun Xiaohu?" "Get lost." Yun Zhonghu cursed. "Yun Zhonglong." "Get lost." Everyone said in unison. "Yun Zhonglong." "Get lost." "Don't Yun Zhonglong." "Yun Zhonglong, what do you think?" Yun Zhonghu pondered for a moment and nodded. "Yun Zhonglong." Sua Chonglu sighed. Sigh, little Yu. A few months later, little Fatty Yu's wife, Mo Xuani, also gave birth. Everyone cheered again. Little Fatty was drunk. He hugged Sua Xiao Duo and talked a lot. "The royal family came to us. They said they wanted to make the Yu family the royal family. The emperor should abdicate to the Yu family. I didn't agree. The ancestors fought for mankind, not for the Yu family to be the emperor. If I agreed, the Yu family would have tarnished the two ancestors' reputation. Besides, we're living much better than the royal family now. Boss, give the child a name." This time, Sua Xiao Duo pondered for a long time and didn't joke. Because he knew that as long as he said it, little fatty would agree. This was no longer a joke. His words were the law. What generation is it? The next generation is the Ping generation. Then let's call him Yu Ping Xing. Okay. Another year later, Zhuo Xiao Duo once again displayed his prowess. With the 9-9 cat hammer, he smashed his team that was not strong enough. Get lost. All of you, get lost. Why are all of you staying in this world? Why aren't you leaving when you can? Staying here and eating my food. When will you be able to repay your debt? Everyone owes me too much. The least one owes me 36 million continents worth of wealth. If you don't go out and work hard, how are you going to repay your debt? Do you really think you're a jack of all trades? Zhuo Xiao Duo swung the 9-9 cat hammer and chased away this group of shameless people. Don't even think about coming back. I've already left a soul imprint on you. If I want to confirm your current location, it's a matter of minutes. Zhuo Xiao Duo threatened, hurry up and go to work to repay your debt. Everyone left awkwardly with bruised and swollen faces. Before leaving, Li Chenglong, Long Yuxing, and the others went to Qin Fangyang's grave and kowtowed to bid farewell. In fact, they all knew that they had no choice but to leave. With so many great cultivators above the sage level gathered on this continent, even Zhongguang's ancestral land could not bear it. Not only Li Chenglong and the others were kicked out, but even Zhuo Xiao Duo himself would be kicked out soon. Dad, Mom, where are we going? I don't care where you're going. Your mom and I are going out to play. Zhuo Changlu snorted and said, anyway, we have a soul imprint. As long as you two don't give birth, we won't come back. Let's see how much you miss us. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face turned bitter. Zhuo Xiaonian's face turned as red as a tomato, the kind that was ripe. If they wanted to have a child, it would be a matter of minutes. However, Zhuo Xiao Duo felt that he was not ready to be a father yet. In comparison, he still wanted to spend a few more years with his wife. Once they had a child, his wife would no longer be his alone. Zhuo Xiao Duo knew this very well. Countless novels, legends, and myths all proved this point. Then you two should go. When I miss you, I'll give birth to a child and call you. When you think about us, you should always think about us, Zhuo Xiao Duo said heartlessly. With Father Zhuo and Mother's was current cultivation level, even if they met a Tao ancestor again, they could still fight with him. Moreover, they had a good chance of winning. Therefore, Zhuo Xiao Duo was really not worried about the old couple's safety, not to mention that he had sent out a whole team, and they were all connected by soul. Even if something really happened, they could organize a group fight with just a soul message. Zhuo Xiao Duo felt that in this vast starry sky, there were only a few people who could withstand his group fight. Therefore, Zhuo Changlu and his wife also left. After a period of time, Zhuo Xiao Duo let his fully formed small world, which was flawless, graze the starry sky and let it develop on its own. Xiao Long, Xiao Xiao, do as you see fit and have fun. Don't come to me if you don't have anything to do. If something happens, don't come to me. I'm old, and my mentality is old. I can't handle things. And Hai Han Shan, Matey Cat, Shadiao, you guys, I've fulfilled my promise to you. When you have the strength to travel the starry sky, come to me again. I promise that one day, I'll let you join my team. Zhuo Xiao Duo said so. Xiao Long and Xiao Huahuang's sword were dumbfounded. You're old. You're obviously lazy, and you don't want to do anything. What are you looking at? When I miss you guys, I'll naturally come to see you. Zhuo Xiao Duo waved his hand and threw the new world far away from the Milky Way. Then, he and Zhuo Xiaonian returned leisurely. They had their own private time together. The two returned to Phoenix City and lived in their old house, just like the Zhuo couple who had transformed into the mortal world. When they had nothing to do, they would visit Huruoyan's house from time to time. Occasionally, they would stroll around Phoenix City's #2 high school. After half a year, they finally felt that the atmosphere was too peaceful and comfortable. Especially in the starry sky, there seemed to be a voice calling them. Under the guidance of karma, the two of them broke through the sky. On the other side of the distant 9 heavens a few people were discussing. Who's on this kid's side? I don't want him. He's too lazy. Even a salted fish is more hardworking than him. I don't want him either. He's too despicable. You can imagine his future reputation. Why don't we just let him form his own faction? Ah, Junxia, you can consider forming an alliance with him. Come on. Spare me. I don't want to have my face covered in blood every day. Chu Yang, you. You have enough people on your side. Even if it's not enough, I don't want him. He's my son. We're not. I'm jealous. Ha ha ha. Yi Xiao, you. Don't call me. I'm all alone, but this kid. Just go away. Everyone was silent. After a while, with a sound, someone else came. Suddenly, everyone's face turned bitter. A voice winked and said, "Oh. You're all here. Come and take a look. Am I more handsome today?" Everyone covered their faces. Suddenly, the guy in the middle's eyes lit up. Tan, you came just in time. Didn't you always complain about not having an ally? Now, your ally is here. You two are a match made in heaven. There is nothing more tacit than that. The new guy was very excited. Really? I have an ally. After so many years, I've been pushed around by you guys. Finally, I have a partner. What do you mean by a match made in heaven? Is it a beauty? I'm a married man. What are you thinking? We mean that your partner is very, very powerful. He can be on par with you in terms of cultivation and other aspects. That's great. Where is he? I'll go find him. From now on, we, the Starry Sky Twin Swordsmen, will travel side by side in the universe. Puff. That's right. From now on, the name of the Starry Sky Twin Swordsmen will be invincible in the universe and the universe will be silent. Ha 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 ha. Thanks for the compliment. I feel relieved. I suddenly feel a bit more handsome. Roar. Ha ha ha. So a Xiao Duo naturally didn't know that a bunch of shameless guys had set up a huge trap for him. He was traveling around with his wife, looking very carefree. At the same time, he was also working hard on his martial arts. Sui Xiaonian was confused. What are you doing every day? I'm restoring something. It's very difficult. What is it? A flower. Dot in the starry sky. These two little things still don't want children. He really doesn't care about the two of us. I'm so angry. If we don't hear from them in half a year, we'll go back and play doubles. Okay. On the continent of astral souls. Hu Ruoyun looked at her daughter, who had grown up, and frowned. Look at you. You're already so old. It's time for you to think about your personal life. Li Qingyue sighed. I'm the principal of Second High now. I have a heavy responsibility on my shoulders. I'm not in a hurry to get married. Martial artists have long lives. Why are you guys in such a hurry? You're an old lady now. Do you know that you're going to stay at home for the rest of your life? I have my own salary. It's not like I'm living off my parents. August mid-autumn. Li Qingyue sat quietly on the roof and looked at the bright moon in the sky. The moon is so round. Her beautiful eyes stared blankly at the moon and the sky without blinking. The sun in the day is also very round. Why can't the sun in the day meet the full moon in the sky? She sat quietly and looked at the moon in a daze. Her hair fluttered in the night wind. Her eyes were in a daze. She seemed to be reminiscing about something. When she was young, there was a pair of warm hands and a person who accompanied her for a long time. Even now, she could still feel the warmth of that person in the palm of her hand. Drip, drip. 2 drops of tears fell on her lapel. I don't like a round sun. I like a square one. But a square one, when will it appear? When will you come back? She hugged her knees and sat quietly on the roof. She looked at the moon. Her expression was calm. After a long time, something seemed to fall from the sky. What was that? She widened her eyes and looked at the sky. She couldn't help but reach out her hand that it floated. Was this a flower? It was crystal clear and dreamy. There seemed to be a faint glow on the petals. Red spider lilies. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.